As hinted at, Arizona basketball has offered another 2027 player. Does this signal a shift in recruiting strategy? And Chip Hale gets ready to compete for a national championship.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. Locked On, your team every day. This show is brought to you today by FanDuel. You can put down $5 and you can get $200 in bonus bets if that bet hits. That simple, that easy. Check out FanDuel.com. All right, now, Arizona basketball. We have got a lot to get to here when it comes to Arizona basketball, obviously. So the first thing, though, that we need to talk about is the recruitment of Darius Wabbington, who we have talked about. That we got Arizona baseball in Omaha, Coastal Carolina, a little bit of a preview. But first, let's talk a little bit about Darius Wabbington. Now, the one thing about kids in Phoenix, is that Arizona has basically said, if you are a good basketball player in Phoenix, you will come to the U of A. That is how this goes down. And that is how this will continue to go down. Darius Wabbington is the latest one. Now, I like Darius Wabbington a great deal. You watch Wabbington, and there's a little bit of a Grant Jarrett type to his game in that he can back you down. It's kind of the slow back down. But not only is it the slow back down, it's also he can also shoot it from distance. He's not a great athlete, but he's good enough. He's functioning, and he's incredibly skilled, and I think that's the thing that you got to really like about him is that he is incredibly skilled. I think he showed in Memphis that, to people out there that were curious about how his game would translate, he's gotten better. The body continues to get better, and there's just not a lot to not like about Darius Wabbington. Plus, Arizona is the dream school. Heard that from many people. So we shall see if this becomes a commitment, what the case may be, but I would imagine that Arizona is going to be very, very good. Now, you look at that 2027 class, and Arizona has already offered a couple kids, and I think you got to give T.J. Benson a lot of credit for that because Tommy Lloyd is somebody that does not look to necessarily offer kids early on. So TJ's done a very, very nice job in that regard. In that, you got the early offer out for Bruce Branch. You've also got the Wabbington one. And I think what's so nice about that too is that you have a strategy in place where it gives these guys a little bit more leeway, a little bit more runway, as some of the people would say, to be able to get some of the players out there that you want to be able to get in on them a little bit earlier, but I do think that it's Tommy trusting his assistants a little bit more, and that's obviously a good thing. So, but back to Wabbington, and we'll get back to that for a little bit. He's not a one and done type player because I don't think he possesses that type of athleticism, but he definitely is somebody that projects as a future NBA type talent in that he's very tall. He's got the long wingspan. And, excuse me. And he understands how to play basketball. That's the other thing. When you watch him, when you see how he can back people down, when you see just kind of the method in which he goes about playing, you can just tell that that's kind of where, you can just kind of tell that that's where it's at. But he's also somebody that would make a lot of sense to he's also somebody that I think would make a lot of sense to be able to, have and be able to project out for a couple years. And I think that's something that's kind of exciting about all of this is that you get somebody that for a fact probably isn't a one and done. We talked about it before with Bruce Branch. Bruce Branch, likely a one and done. Again, you look at his body frame, you look at his type. I mean, we've been through this. We've seen this one before. But Wabbington, probably not that. So you can look at him, and he would be somebody that would come in immediately and play. And by that second year, I think you're hoping that he's kind of a monster. I think you're hoping that you're bringing in 2027. I think you're hoping you're bringing in a pretty loaded class, and I don't see any reason to why that wouldn't be the case. Plus, Tommy likes skilled big men. I mean, that's one thing with Tommy that you can. Tommy takes a lot of pride in finding big men that that can, that he can really mold, that he can come in, with a certain, some with a certain level of skill, some not. Like Umar Ballo came in here and he had basically no level of skill. I mean, it was just kind of brute force. By the time Umar Ballo left, he was averaging, 15-9 at the U of A. But then you got some other guys too, like Christian Coloco, who had skill, but he just really wasn't able to show it under the previous staff. Tommy Lloyd comes in and kind of unleashes him, and Coloco becomes the conference defensive player of the year, not only the defense player of the year, but he becomes a borderline first-round pick in basically no time flat. That's what Arizona was able to do with Christian Coloco. So you got, like I said, you got to give him credit for that one. Now the next one is, where do you get then with Darius Wabbington, and I think that's kind of the trajectory. I think that he probably comes in. I think that he probably plays for, I don't know, he probably plays 12, 15, 16 minutes per game as a freshman, and then I think as a sophomore, you're projecting him out, and you're saying, all right, man, now it's time to really go, and you're probably a starter, and I think you're hopefully off to the NBA at that point. That is, I think, what a reasonable skill trajectory for Darius Wabbington would be. And, like I said, just offering earlier also helps. Now, the one thing about it, too, is that you don't want to wait too long on these kids, and I think Arizona's getting that. I mean, he really showed out well in Memphis. He got a lot of offers, Purdue, Tech, I believe, schools like that. So if you're Arizona, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to wait if you know that he's good enough. And I think that at this stage in the game, if you're Arizona, you know that he is good enough. So why wait? Like I said, I got to give the staff a lot of credit on that one, because, that's not something clearly that Tommy Lloyd is huge on doing, offering kids, ahead of their class, but it's changing a little bit. And I think you got to give TJ Benson a lot of credit for that one. And I think that's what's kind of exciting about all of that. Now, the next thing too is where, how would he fit in then, with this current class of in-state guys. And he fits in near at the top. Look, you got Koa Pete, who, obviously a 5-star kid, in-state. Then you look at the in-state kids as well. Cam Williams, Cam Holmes, both top priorities in-state. You would take them every single day of the week. And then you've got Darius Wabbington. And then Bruce Branch. You got 5 kids right now that are clearly good enough to play at the U of A, and I think there's more. Like we've talked about it before. I'd love to see where Mason McGee is in the grand scheme of this, because with Mason McGee, like I said, I like him. I think that he would commit to the U of A, and I think he gives you a little bit of stability at the point guard position that, if an Akina Olozie were to leave or whoever Arizona were to get. But Wabbington would be a nice little cornerstone in that 2027 class. You put him next to a Bruce Branch and possibly a Jason Gardner, and I think you look at it and you're kind of, like I said, you're in a pretty good spot at that. You're in a pretty good spot at that point. Now, a lot's been made about, like with a lot of these kids, where are you at with, as far as a commitment goes? Can you get a commitment? I think that's the question that a lot of people have. And where does Arizona exactly stand in the grand scheme of things? Because again, you got to remember too, I mean, Phoenix, as we've talked about before, Phoenix is absolutely loaded in talent right now, and you want to be able to get all of those kids. This isn't a situation. If you prioritize a kid, you want to be able to get him. So, what are the chances, though, that the Arizona Wildcats can secure a commitment from somebody like a Darius Wabbington? But first, FanDuel, my friend. The NBA playoffs are here. Obviously, and the finals are here. The NBA finals are, they're in full swing, and they deliver highlight-worthy performances. Now, you got a massive game. You got the Pacers, and you got the Thunder. Who do you want in that one? Because, again, there's a lot of good options. FanDuel makes it easy to bet on this. You can bet before tip-off, and with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have way more plays than ever to play smart and win big. Here's the cool thing, too. You can bet during the game, which is, or you can parlay stuff. It's great. You want to parlay Shea with somebody else or whatever the case may be. You can do that one. Check it out again. But again, here's the deal. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If the bet wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And like I said, the NBA Finals are here. You're going to want to hop in on that one now. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about where Arizona is in the Darius Wabbington recruitment. I would expect Arizona to get Darius Wabbington. I had somebody ask me, they're like, well, let's see, why where else would he go? I think this is the school that he wants to go to. I believe that Arizona has been his dream school. And listen, if you're in Phoenix and you're a basketball player, Arizona is most likely going to be your dream school. That is like I said, that's another one, not really breaking any news on. That's going to be probably your dream school. And why? Because you can get there, or you can get to the NBA from there. Everybody wants to get to the NBA, obviously. You can get paid, and you can get a really good coach in the process in Tommy Lloyd that has shown that he can put players in the NBA. You look at Ben Mathurin. You look at Christian Coloco. You look at a Dalen Terry. You look at a Keyshawn Johnson, a Pella Larson, a Carter Bryant. He puts guys in the NBA, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what these kids want. Everybody likes playing college basketball. Most kids don't dream of playing college basketball, though. They dream of making millions of dollars in the NBA. And I think that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of where that's why I think it's easy for these. Plus, with TJ Benson is an awesome source for all of this because TJ Benson gets it exactly. TJ Benson is incredibly well respected in the Phoenix area, and that's why we were hoping for the longest time that he would get that job. He has been a very, very valuable addition to this Arizona basketball staff. He and Murph work tirelessly. Obviously, I would expect a Brandon Chappelle to be much the same. But when you've got guys that are all responsible for certain areas, it makes things easier. And I think you got to give TJ a lot of credit with Koa Pete. Because again, I think a lot of people, and I felt this way as well, and this kind of goes a little bit back from what we were just talking about, but I think with a lot, I don't think that Arizona was Koa Pete's dream school. And again, I get that he's an exception, but Arizona worked on him nonstop, got him a very competitive NIL package, and I think just as importantly, it was easy for him to say, okay, I'll be there for 8 months before I go off to the NBA. That's kind of, like I said, that's with Koa Pete. That's what I think that's kind of what you're looking at. And I think TJ Benson landing him obviously did a great deal of good for the program, did a great deal of good for basically everybody involved because, again, it was like I said, it was a strong recruitment effort put forth by TJ. Now, Wabbington, I think if you were to ask me, I think Wabbington probably commits in the next month. That's just a guess. I have no inside information on that, but I do believe that he will commit fairly quickly because Arizona wants him. He is at a position of need. He is also at a position, too, where it's easy to see him saying, all right, I'm going to go there for a couple years, and then I'm off to the NBA. So it just makes a lot of sense on all sides for Arizona and Darius Wabbington to get this one finished up, and you can get on to 2027, hopefully get a commitment from Bruce Branch. But again, you're going to see Arizona's going to hit the state of Arizona hard and hard and hard and hard and hard and hard. And that is something that, you're going to continue to see. But like I said, with Darius Wabbington, that was a big time get for the U of A. Got to give them a ton of credit. All right, now let's get to a little bit of Arizona baseball. Arizona baseball is in Omaha now. And again, they're playing Coastal Carolina on Friday at 11 o'clock. All right, here's the deal with Arizona and Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina is a favorite, obviously. They're very, very good, but they're also not as big a favorite as North Carolina was over Arizona, and Arizona went right in there and beat North Carolina. And I think just a big reason why is just because this team is incredibly opportunistic. If the pitching isn't going well, then they got something else. I mean, you look at some of the pitchers that, first of all, Smith Bailey is Smith Bailey's the one for me. Listen, he might not be a how do I put this, uh, it might take him a little bit of time, but I also believe too that he is going to be somebody that is going to emerge in a big way. I think he's going to be a first round pick at some point. He doesn't. I'd love to see him get a lot of run here in Omaha. Again, I get that he's a freshman. It's tough to put him in some of those situations, but at the end of the day, he's also somebody that is, like I said, he just looks a little different than the other pitchers. Now, a lot of people like Owen Kronkowski. Again, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert, but when I've watched him, it's been kind of rough at times. So he hasn't exactly stuck out to me. How about that? But you're going to have them, and you're going to have Garazar, and then those are going to be three guys who are going out there, and then you're going to have a lot of middle relievers. But Arizona, like I said, is in a very, very interesting spot. So that will be interesting to see exactly how this plays out. I am curious though. Where exactly does the hitting and all of this come in? And we got to talk about Brendan Summerhill at first. And that is the first thing that we got to talk about is he's going to be a first round pick. Not only is he going to be a first round pick, he's going to be somebody that could be a top 15 pick. It was a great Chip Hale move out of Chicago, and not only out of Chicago, but also somebody that you watch him and you're just kind of like, okay, that guy looks like a major leaguer. There's a number of those guys, but you got to get, now listen, I know Summerhill's battling injuries. I get all of that. You got to get him right somehow. However that is, you got to get him right. Or you got to have him be effective in some way, shape, or form, because he's just too important of a player. Now, there's other guys that have been able to pick up the slack, obviously. Mason White. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Mason White actually comes back to the U of A next year, but he is, he's one of the best players in U of A history. And, like I said, he's another one. Very, very good at Chip Hale recruit there. But this is a team, though, that is just kind of hitting on all cylinders up and down the lineup. And I got to give Tommy Splain. Even I know he's been here forever, but Tommy Splain is one of the most clutch hitters on this team. And I watch him, and it's just kind of like, all right, if there's a big hit to be made, him or Guzman are generally doing it. Now, Guzman's another one. Guzman, he's been working the count, and, like I said, if you get Guzman out, and I know that he's been a lot better of late, then you really worked on that one, because Guzman is no slouch. How about that? But either way, the lineup has been really, really tough all up and down the lineup. It's been tough, and I think that's something that Arizona has going for it. Now, there's a couple other things that I look at, and I say to myself that this is going to also be a very interesting situation for Arizona, and that is going to be in the bullpen. Could that be the difference in this series? Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about this Coastal Carolina series here. Tony Pluto has been he's been awesome. Now again, another Illinois kid, another guy that like I said, you look up and down this roster, there's a lot of Illinois kids. You got Nets, you got Pluto, and you've got Summerhill. So Chip Hale clearly has a connection there. There was also another kid that was a first-round pick a couple years ago. So there's definitely a connection there with Illinois. But Pluto is nice to have because he's also shown that he can go multiple innings, and he's probably the best closer in the country. And in College World Series, sometimes you're going to need a guy to be able to go 2 innings. And that's exactly what he did against North Carolina. That's where it's going to be huge, though, for this team. If you get a win going into the late innings, can you control that win? Can you take charge of that? If you can take charge of that, then like I said, I think you're looking at an Arizona team that is in very, very good shape with all of that. Now, the other thing with this as well is some of the middle relievers. Nets. obviously was very, very good. There's going to be some times where guys get into jams, and we've seen that and you've got to be able to get through that. And you kind of look at it. You look at it early on. In that game 3, Smith Bailey gives up the 3-run homer in the 3rd or the 4th, I can't remember, but then Arizona is able to hold serve. You're going to have to do that because there's going to be, in college baseball, there's going to be some innings where you're like, all right, well, this is a bad inning for us. And you just kind of go, you just kind of hope from there that that's that won't really be the case. So there is that. Now, when it comes to Coastal Carolina, they're really, really good. They made quick work of Auburn, obviously. They've won a College World Series. Heck, we know that they won a College World Series because they won it against us. But they're also, again, Arizona's just playing as good a ball as anybody in the country right now. I am a big believer in a momentum. And when it comes to baseball especially, Arizona's playing really well right now. Sure, you're going to have a hiccup or two, but Arizona's playing well, and all of their players are kind of picking up each other. They're playing a complementary baseball, and I think that's, like I said, that's something that's also kind of cool to see. I'm also curious to see, though, some of the run, because Arizona could return a lot of these guys next year. And I know that you're worried about a lot of these guys leaving, but Arizona could return a lot of players, and your entire pitching staff is back. So, you could say that's good, you could say that's bad, or whatever the case may be. But Arizona's built for a nice little run here, I believe. I mean, you got this year, and then I think Chip Hale recruits at a certain level that brings itself to that you'll be able to keep this one going. And I guess, like I said, and North Carolina is really, really good. Not only is North Carolina really, really good, they're talented across the board, and that's why I think it's fair to say that this is Arizona's not going to be intimidated by anybody, because I think you could make the case that North Carolina is about as talented team as there is in the country. So we will see. But Coastal Carolina, that game is on Friday at 11. We're going to be having a post-game show right after that as well to basically break down everything that goes on in that game and what you need to know. But wanted to talk a ton about Darius Wabbington here. What this Arizona staff offers are few and far between. So you want to be able to get the players in there that are obvious offers. And in 2027, that's the case. Darius Wabbington is that dude. Bruce Branch is that guy. Now, the next one I would keep an eye on is Jason Gardner Jr. I don't know the exact deal with Jason Gardner Jr., why he hasn't been offered. Obviously, his dad's on staff. There could be more to it. I don't know, because he does seem like he would be an easy offer, but he's obviously in the Midwest now as we speak, so who knows how that one is going to play out. But Wabbington fits in very well with what Arizona wants to do. And, like I said, shout out to Tommy Lloyd again for, allowing his assistants to offer guys a little bit earlier. And that is definitely working out to Arizona's advantage. And I think you will continue to see that when you got a staff of recruiters that really want to get after it. It's a good spot to be in, and Arizona is obviously in a very, very good spot when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to basketball, and when it comes to this entire state. Got a lot of talent in Phoenix, and you're going to want to get that. But so again, you got that. But all eyes on Arizona baseball this week. You're off to Omaha, and a lot of people I think are admitting now that they were wrong about Chip Hale, and it's cool to see because Chip's a good guy. Everybody likes Chip, and at the same time, you also see a guy in Chip that, he wants to be here. Not only does he want to be here, he also wants to be the guy that, I think is, this means a lot to him. It's just not a transactional type guy. Chip's done an amazing job here. And like I said, you got him, you got Kevin Vance, and I think this thing's going to be able to keep going on for quite a while. Excited to see. He's definitely put together a good roster, a good staff, and basically everybody in between. But as always, very, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A. And again, Arizona offering kids earlier now and a And we got a nice little Omaha series coming up here. We will talk with you soon.